by combining historical, climate, food, and economic data so you can make informed decisions as we shift into a new era. Here's what was, this is what's coming. Our world is never going back to 2019, so what will the new era look like? And most importantly, what is immediate that will affect the pocketbook and the outlook into next year so we can all get ready? Thank you for joining. I'm your host, David DuByne. I'm right along here with Ransom Godwin, spinning through the cosmos. This beautiful blue planet, take another breath, celebrate life. And for you being here to witness all these changes, how exciting is that? I'm so grateful. Just so astounded at the luck that I have to stand on this planet and witness these changes right now that haven't been seen in thousands of years. So much gratefulness, so much gratitude, just bursting out of my heart of thankfulness for allowed to witness and be and experience all of this change, and knowing what's coming with the plasma displays in the skies, the electrical fronts coming through, just the meteor showers that are going to be inbound here real heavy in 2025 in April, just a lot of different things. And you know what? Have you seen they're talking about the Atlantic Ocean stopping because they need to explain massive, rapid changes on our planet? Oh, wait, they already knew that was coming in around the year 2000. So it's just we're into the uptick phase right now. And the actual strongest amount of this first wave of change will be from October 2024 all the way through, the beginning of April 2025 with some heavier meteor showers and dense debris areas of space we're going to travel through out in front of the sun by ourselves. All the planets behind us, all of them, every one of them behind us. And that'll happen for a few months. So if you're looking from, say, October 2024 to probably September of October 2025, the amount of change you're going to see, the sky phenomenon, these things that you never thought humanly possible, in addition to all the changes governmentally, financially, it's going to be an exciting ride. So you can look at it two ways. Excuse me, I hit the microphone there, my bad. You can look at it in two different ways. You can sit there and go, oh, whoa, me. Or you can sit there and go, oh, it's the greatest opportunity in human history. I'm so excited and thankful to be here. And you can take it by the horns and really run with this. You know, our economy is shifting, so it's not going to be about making the money. It's going to be about prospering in whatever way, shape, or form that takes for you. Like you could grow the biggest vegetables, have the best chickens, whatever it is. Create the best handmade something. And like there's value in that too. Are you kidding me? Or if you're able to teach somebody to do something, there's so much value in that. You know, this whole thing about the money that we've been raised up on, at least the last 5-6 generations heavy since the central banking after the turn of the century of the 1900s. You know, it's all been about money, 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 accruing wealth. Is how much money you have, is how good of a person you are, the status in life, the socioeconomic strata, you know. It's been like that. That's what you're brainwashed. That is like the base layer of that's the bedrock of the way life is. And if that were to change, oh my, that would upset a lot of things. Well, it is changing. It's about to change much further. And if you can get a handle on it and start to think in different ways that value will be created outside money and printing money. Like once you start to twist that Rubik's Cube together on that, then that kind of the preface of tonight's program. So Ransom, thank you for joining us, or me and everybody out there. Glad we can have a talk tonight. There's so much change since last week. It's unbelievable.
YOLO. Yeah, I'm waiting for the aliens, man. I think we all need to grow popcorn so that we can watch the show unfold that you're speaking of. So many changes. It looks like they really are about to pull that card. They just don't have nothing left to scare anybody with. Look at all the stuff that they've thrown at us since 2020. I mean, it's just, you name it, they threw it at us. Fear for every, it's like they have a little machine that gets charged up But it doesn't last very long because, people aren't afraid of things after a week or two goes by, and it becomes old news, even though they beat them over the head with it like the hottest earth that we've ever had that we're living on. I gotta admit, man, they're pretty good. It's scary, man.
Comedy
come
show,
on.
everybody.
It really is, though. The whole thing. From politics all the way down, it's all a clown show, a comedy show, and we're having a comedy show just talking about it because it's so bizarre. Like in the last week, how many elder people that have been in office for so long have either got caught having somebody, winding them up from the back, telling them what to say, or them completely spacing out. Maybe their medications got crossed. I don't know what's going on, but both sides of the aisle. It's like who you got Biden, Feinstein, you got Mitch McConnell. He just went off into the twilight zone the other day. I don't know if you saw that, but it looked like his batteries just went dead. Like he just got drained there, and they had to, push him off stage, basically. He wasn't on a stage. It was at a press conference. And then Feinstein, the give me all your guns, Mr. and Mrs. America lady, didn't know where she was at. She thought she was giving a speech, and some guy had to come up and tell her, just vote aye and shush. They were telling her, be quiet and just vote yes. Her handler, so to speak. The whole thing is a clown show. And then, of course, you got in the background, you got these hearings on the UHPers or whatever they're calling them. There's so many alphabet acronyms. I have trouble. I called them UFOs from the beginning. And now they're just saying, no, they got bodies. It's the same old Roswell tale that they've been telling since the 50s. But now they're giving it a stage. And why not, with all of the other, chicanery that's been going on, the hoaxes, the fictional fear stories that they put out on the mainstream media. It's kind of hard to ignore now. Especially with them up in the ante, telling you stuff that's easily and, not even hard to prove wrong. Like, and they really do have everyone on this heat index thing. They're like, it's only 98 degrees outside, but it feels like 115. And I know we brought this up before because everything's about feelings now. Like you could go film in a public place and exercise your constitutional rights. And the next thing you know, you'll have law enforcement telling you that people's feelings trump your rights. And it's all around like that with everything. And they know that that's the way it is. And that's why they pump out the heartwarming, fear about the planet burning up. We're all dying. All the animals are dying. Don't worry about it. What are you going to do? You should move to Canada and take part in their self-erasing campaign. You could get government aid up there to help yourself go away. And isn't that the era we're in? We're in the culling transitional phase here, in my opinion. And why not, convince everyone that the earth is over? You might as well quit. Don't have children. We got some new people moving in. By the way, there's aliens, and we got their technology, but we're not going to let you use it. We're just kind of waiting for the Western world to annihilate itself so the next phase can begin. And everywhere I look through the news, that's what it is. It's kind of a suicidal idea of the world that, we just need to turn off, and the governments are right. All of those Bilderberg people are right. We're just a bunch of breeders and eaters, and we just need to go because we're killing the planet. And that way their kids and their grandkids, who, by the way, never get aborted. They don't go abort their children, the elite. They don't do that kind of thing. That's for poor people. They've convinced everyone, the only real God-given right that you have in existence is to carry on your line. If you choose to do that or not do that, either way. But they convinced people that's a good idea. Just get rid of yourself. And, by the way, if you want to do it as an adult, we'll help you out with some financial assistance. Just give us the title to your land there and sign that over, and it can be a smooth transition. And that way, all of these elite people, their grandkids can own giant swaths of land that they run because they're the head chair of some international group that they've created to, caretake the environment and the planet we're at that sci-fi movie. I mean, we are definitely living in it. I'm trying to go in a breakaway civilization. Did you happen to see that video that came out of Ukraine? That they were two British guys talking about how horrible the war was going, and then in the background you see
it's a comedy
these
show.
ladies.
I'm sorry, folks, it's a comedy show tonight. Did you see that silliness? The clown car pops open, all four jump out to the exact same moment, and they run in and they grab. What did they grab? Like thousands of pounds of concrete under each arm. Like what?
That's not even the same one I'm talking about. It was with these ladies that were, they were buff. I was thinking, I don't even know how they're having a problem with the war with women as strong as those women. I mean, because our women don't compete. Those chicks were picking up, just stacking them up like books. I'm sorry. Did I say Freudian slip, styrofoam?
You said
they were
styro.
concrete blocks. Yeah, so there definitely is a theater going on. Oh man, I'm gonna find that so people could watch that in the background. It's just hilarious though. You can't believe anything you see now, and now they're all debating, how we're going to transition over to the AI top-down corporate system, because that's what the main phase that we're moving into. While they're calling off the population, they are also transitioning society to be a more technocratic, smooth ran society. I saw all those people lining up for the World Coin or something like that, a new crypto that's the international one, and they're going to hook that up with your international ID. And they keep trying this over and over again, right? They tried it with COVID. Now it's your money, just as predicted. So where will this go? Will you have to pay a small fee to breathe? I mean, literally, I'm waiting for them to go ahead and say it, that there is a breathing tax, because you exist, and you like the millions of cattle that you're eating are putting out carbon dioxide, and that must be poison in the plants or something. I don't know what they're scared of with that, but it's definitely horrible, whatever it is.
When you said the orb, the silver orb, it reminded me of Pokemon. Because remember in the beginning, people were running around on their phones looking for the Pokemon thing. I never played it. Sorry, can't describe it to you. Somebody knows it way better than me. It's like you looked at your phone and you ran around and tried to triangulate where this digital thing was. Can you imagine? I didn't know much about it, so I watched a quick 3-minute video of the World Coin itself from its own promotional video, and it had 40, 50 cities where these orbs are. So I'm sure people are running around, me next. Who in their right mind would just look into that thing and give their iris print away to some just random orb? What if there's a fake counterfeit orb out there that's grabbing your data? And be like, sheesh. It's kind of silly to get, just to run up to something nothing about and give. That's like giving your vein print away on your hand, which is another biometric way that they want to verify humans. Is this vein, all the veins running through your fingers and your palm all the way up to your wrist. It's very unique for each individual human, just like a fingerprint. But fingerprints, I don't know, aren't secure enough anymore, so they want you to put a whole hand down there so they get a full, not only the tip of the finger, but the full, and then they get a palm print, and then they actually read the veins in your hand. Like an iris scan is the same way. It's so complex, so just unbelievable. You look at nature too, how many variants are there? You got 8 billion people, well, less now, but let's say 7 billion plus people. And they're all unique and different with that signature of your iris and also your palm print. But they want you to give that away for what? I saw some people talking about this becoming a universal basic income thing to do in the future, but they were wondering where the revenue is going to stem from. So they were likening it to Groupon, where everybody has to get in on it. The more people that get in on it, the more universal basic income comes. But looks like they're going to charge companies to verify you're a human, and in that transaction, a fee or whatever it is for you then to use your universal basic income to buy a product in a store. That verification process of you being a human to purchase something is going to be what's charged to the corporations to get the money to then give you the universal basic income if you sign up for the program. So for me, it's a little maniacal to look at that and go, that is just insanity at its highest level. then you'll have to, and then you won't be able to go into the stores or do anything or transact in any of those stores unless you're bio, whatever, accredited. I don't know which word the word they're going to use to say, yeah, we got everything. We got the iris print, we got the hand print, we got the DNA. They're good. Let them in to buy mRNA injected beef or no beef right now. I talked to somebody up in the cattle industry yesterday. Like when I say way up, I mean like at the top of controlling corn and dairy or corn flows into California for the dairy industry, kind of at the top. No mRNA injections right now in the beef, but there are in the pork. Because Ransom and I, we're going to start to take on some different companies that we really believe in here to put them in the program and talk about that. And one company is never will inject mRNA ever into the feed. But see, your world coin universal basic income won't allow you that type of food unless you actually know the farmer or whatever. That spend won't be there. So that company will pivot and we'll have to pivot also into some way to transact to find a medium of currency or a medium of exchange or value that we both agree on. Because I want their mRNA free meat, but they might not be able to participate in banking because they're not all bio-identified or whatever that that last term is, bio-tracked, bio-identified, bio-marked. I don't know. There's probably 100 terms we could use. That'll allow you to go into Walmart, though. Are you kidding me? Walmart, Costco, and these kind of things. Although some great foods in those bigger box stores if you search. It's just there's still a lot of junk in there. But Walmart, a lot of junk on the shelves too, processed foods, etc. You could still get a sliver. It's like 10% in there maybe. You could make your way around. So that's just ridiculous for people who are giving away all their thing. It reminded me of Pokemon. Now imagine what happens in Taiwan. They had those videos of thousands and thousands and thousands of people just going down the street, going like almost like one of these Egyptian movies, like, oh, the mummies walking down the street, like thousands of mummies. Imagine if they go with the orb, or something like that, where everybody starts chasing the orb. There's free money in the orb. I have to get the orb. Maybe it's some maniacal Black Mirror type of thing. Because perhaps you have to get the orb to be able to get for this universal basic income, but they're only going to leave one orb in each city. And the slower you sign up for the program, the less you're going to have available. Like they're going to start pulling plugs on different types of things that you consider available in life. What if you could only pay your electric bill if you were signed up to this world coin orb thing? And that's the only way it's done. Like if you're not on, if you didn't do it, you cannot anywhere on earth pay an electric bill without being in that system. Period. Then what? Then you have to borrow somebody else's body, literally, and go, hey, Jane, my next door neighbor, Jane, can you, your eye's already in there. Can you go pay my electric bill for me? But what if they make a statute where, nope, has to your name. You have to pay it. You can't pay your electric bill. No, Jane's got my money right here. She's going to pay it for me. No, it has to come from you, from your UBI account or something, and we won't let another substitute person pay for you. Imagine that orb is the only thing that allows you to that. Like, what kind of weirdness would happen? There's one orb in like 50 or 100 cities around the world. You'd have to trek, like going to Mecca or something to be able to go to get the orb. And then the amount of blood and gore surrounded around the orb, because only the people that fought hard enough could get to the orb to put their eye print in there and their iris scan, and that's it. And then you start to see all these different kind of movies where, it's a survival of the fittest. I got the orb. I could see it going something like this crazy world. And then throw in some aliens. And I just wanted to say one last thing is, how did they go from, think about, there's a new possible Cuban Missile Crisis out there. Ooh, scary. A possible nuclear war. Oh, scary. Because it's bigger and it's hotter, I guess. You can toast mushrooms. Get close enough to roast your marshmallows in that. And then there was the COVID before that prepped you for all the change. Now we got the climate thing. Oh my gosh. The Atlantic overturning oscillation, meridional overturning oscillation, the AMOC, is stopping just like the day after tomorrow, as soon as 2025. The oceans are going to stop. But that's not going to be scary enough because nobody will get it. I mean, people know so little about science today and geography that they just won't even get it. Okay, there's an ocean over there. There's some land here, and what? That's about the extent of it. So they can't scare you with that one. That's not scary enough. A whole ocean shutting down, although it's going to take considerably more time than that. Please don't believe the 2025 that the entire ocean's going to shut down. You think stopping a freight train has a little bit of like lag time behind it? You know, think about a 3-mile long freight train screaming across the Midwest plains somewhere. You got to wait 30 minutes for this train to pass when the crossing comes down. Going at full speed, like that thing's going to take a minute to slow down, right? Well, think about an entire ocean. How long is that going to take to slow down? We're talking like maybe seeing some bigger effects around 2060, 2100, but you know, a lot of us aren't going to be able to be too old by that time. Well, past of old age. But what is the UFOs, unidentified aerial vehicles, just like you were talking about, UAVs. See, here's the thing. 2 birds, 1 stone is what I'm going to say. If they're going to come up with a universal basic income, they're going to have to come out with a way to give you free power or have some kind of power that doesn't rely on fossil fuel burning, doesn't require nuclear, hydroelectric bad, fish can't swim. So what if they destroy all that and they give you Tesla magnetic motors that run on the Earth's magnetic field? Oh, wait, that came from the UFOs. And plus, either they have the UFOs actually arrive at the Earth and supposedly our own craft, electric gravitics from the 1950s. Or what I'm seeing now is a bunch of like alien stuff coming on the regular news during the daytime. Or, you know, anytime you check a news feed, you'll see like an alien story. I just saw one where they interviewed an alien. They had one from a crash site and it was alive and they were interviewing it and they had some people who were telepathic go in and chat with it or whatever. Full story for like 9 minutes on the news. I was thinking, what is this? So you think about that. They can introduce the aliens. And that's a full scare for everybody. Overturning ocean, nobody knows what that means. The thing moves like 100 miles, you know, a decade or something. So nobody's really going to jive with it. It's too slow. It doesn't move fast enough. But like a fake spaceship appearing above a city, that'll do it. So, Ransom, I totally agree with you. I really think the aliens are coming next. There's nothing left to scare a planet because it's not hot enough. And people look out in their backyard and go, dude, it's summer. It's always hot. It doesn't appear that much hotter than it's normally hot. So I don't know what they're talking about because not in this area. So that heat scare can only go for another month maximum. Because we're going to come into, into fall real quick here in a month or so. So that's totally done. They shot their load on that one already. I don't know where it leaves us. There's very few choices left on the Great Reset. So it's got to be, I'm going to say, financial crisis and alien invasion. At the same time, the ozone hole is depleting and going to get real large in the southern hemisphere from now until October. I mean, it's going to get gargantuanly big. The biggest... More than the biggest since 2000, maybe the biggest ever measured under our current time as we understand science to measure an ozone hole. It'll be the biggest plus. So just like they ran with the temperatures, the ozone hole is actually expanding because of ozone breaking down in this area of the atmosphere called the mesosphere. It's above the stratosphere, and that Hungatonga eruption blew all that ice up there. So there's a huge amount of surfaces for the ozone to break down on. And they're not seeing noctilucent clouds this year because noctilucent clouds are only at the edge of like where the light is shining past the earth after sunset at the wispiest. I mean, wispy, very wispy kind of debris that would be up there from rocket launches or meteorites coming in, leaving smoke streaks through the atmosphere. That kind of super wispy over an area. Well, after that eruption in Tonga, it's so dense that the light doesn't refract in that wispiness anymore. It's just way too dense up there for the light to get through. So they're not seeing noctilucent clouds anywhere on the planet this year. That just shows that area in the atmosphere is super dense, so the light's not able to go like just glean through it like it was in the wispy days of rocket launches and meteors only, or meteorites. Anyway, I was going somewhere with that, Ransom, and I lost my track of thought. So please take me back. Bring me back.
Well, I've noticed that they've turned the media kind of, you brought up that movie The Day After Tomorrow, And that's really accurate because, that was a super global warming scare movie that we messed it up, and we messed up the North Atlantic flow there. And then, all these super ice storms came down and froze everything, turning it into a new ice age. But what's so funny about the whole thing is that it seems like movie script and news stories aren't that far apart. And they've even kind of designed the news stories to run like, flipping through the cable channels, so to speak. If I'll show you, you could take your pick of movies. Okay, here we got war movies. Ukraine started using U.S. provided cluster munitions in combat. That's going to bring you at least a decade of horror stories about who got burned, who got messed up, why did they do that, was it wrong, blah, yada, yada, yada. So there's plenty. It's like they make their own content. Here's a different movie right here. Scientists resurrected an extinct animal frozen for 46,000 years in Siberia. It's a little roundworm, tapeworm thing that, might have, I don't know, viruses not seen also in that amount of time living in its guts or being produced there. They have no idea. But anyway, it's a new field of study. What could go wrong? And then here's you one, weirdo, alien life on Earth, new underwater species discovered all over the coast of California. Even though the world's dying, they keep finding new species that pop up when conditions change. Isn't that weird? And then back to the UFOs. They've recovered alien spacecraft. We know that. It's the same old Roswell story, though. It's just a new guy telling it to the U.S. Congress here. And then you keep getting the little anecdotal stories, and they're trying to make this mainstream. And not because they want to, be square with the American people or the people of the world at large. It's because they have an agenda like every other thing. So this plot twist right here, is kind of like soft disclosure, and they're going to keep doing that. But what they know, people are like goldfish, and when they can't work on the world's burning up anymore, they're going to flip over to, look, it's free cold storms and this and that, or they'll switch back to what they're already preparing for. If you've been also looking through the news articles, is we got to worry about having flu and RSV and that other thing that went around for a couple of years, because that's going to make a real big comeback this winter, according to, specialists. Plus, all across industry, you could tell that even though there's Bidenomics and they give you the movie of great times, it's not translating over to the real experience of the human that's watching the media. And more strikes in all the industries mean more supply chain issues. So that's a real world movie of poverty for you. And, you were talking about that ID, the little sphere. And that's kind of what this guy's describing that's been flying around. And weirdly, I've seen similar things. Now, I don't know if it's technology from somewhere else, as they claim, or it's manufactured right here in the United States, because, I've seen it's what we call blinkies here in the Tularosa Basin. People have nicknamed it that. And it's these lights that just pop up in the sky, and they look like these giant luminescent orbs, and they blink in different patterns. Seemingly, it's really hard to get them on film because I literally sit outside nights with my camera waiting on it. Never does it happen, seemingly, when I have a camera, but I've seen it a lot. Now, what is it? I don't know, but that's exactly what this guy's describing. And then back to, the circle back machine, people are goldfish, so they know they're going to forget about the planet burning up here in a few months, just like you're saying. In the meantime, in the background, they're making the movie, to skip back to the movie theme tonight, pre-crime, with Tom Cruise. That's what's going on right now. So they are trying to consolidate every form or kind of identification into one streamlined, AI-controlled, top-down system, where the human being has no choice in any activity that it does, from finance to protecting oneself. And here's an article right here. The first smart gun is finally coming to the market, but will anyone get it? I hope not. I hope you're not dumb enough to get that. But the whole idea of a digital ID can translate into many different aspects in the human domain that people might not have thought about, like not being able to get medication, not being able to get food, not being able to purchase any new self-defense systems, or whatever you want to call it, because they're steadily trying to attack this, but they might agree to it if it's a genetic gun, not unlike another movie. What was that Demolition Man, where they had everything, and then also Judge Dredd. The guns were all coded to their DNA, which goes along with everything else in the human domain. And this might be laughable, but it shows you the level of immersion of the everyday average citizen trying to break away and condition themselves not to relate to actual reality or escape reality in some way, whatever it is, through buying things that make them happy for a short time, or more weird things that tie back into this AI-controlled monopoly of human activities. Here's one. This is a thought-controlled pleasure toy, I'll say that for the censors, that lets you have a good time with yourself by using your mind. Now, I don't know about you, but I thought that's how you did it already. But anyway, here's a mind-controlled device that you can use, and they're going to move this to every aspect, to where people will live online with their little avatars while they sit inside these cells we call our homes, while the AI tells you when you can go, where, and, if you're allowed to do that. And then the same thing in the entertainment industry, where they're slowly admitting that they are also converting over to an AI total system. So everything they're creating visually, sounds, and all the way to the actors are going to start being AI. And another strike, which, it is a product and it does make money. So people don't think of it as, like a product like other things in a supply chain. But, go out there and look for a new movie. They're not making them. They're just they just keep repeating the same thing. They only have the same message, because so many fingers have been put into the movie industry to put out propaganda and predictive programming that they just can't seem to put together a plot that's interesting anymore. And then here's some more of predictive programming, and they've, like Klaus Schwab and everybody's told you, you have to get worried for terrorist attacks of hackers. Because they're going to take down the grid, and they're going to use this fear of people being out of electricity for long periods of time to, ask for help and beg for help of a new system that controls everything. And then all through the market, like Bud Light's laying off everybody. So there's another one where jobs are disappearing. Russia also going over to a digital ruble. Everybody's going digital worldwide. And our government wants to control your digital identity. And they're all rooting for the same thing. It's where you cannot move about on this planet without being spied upon 24 hours a day, and everything from your biometrics to how you feel, your health, everything controlled by a centralized system that's controlled by an artificial intelligence, which makes you circle back to the idea of these supposed extraterrestrials. We may, and the guys talking about them being biological, that may not be true. How do we know that it's not an artificial intelligence that they've agreed to link up to? But think about what that means. What kind of concessions would an extraterrestrial, maybe a living AI or even an biological extraterrestrial, would have to have some concessions? Maybe that our whole world spoke in one voice. Maybe that a digital currency that could be translated to their digital system, so that they could also participate. Or how about a genderless society, because the aliens may not have the same parts as we do and may feel offended. And not only that, they might not feel safe on the ground if, people don't hand over all their self-defense systems, right? I mean, think about Anunnaki walking down Las Vegas Boulevard, where they've banned traveling with not only a firearm, but they've banned traveling in a motor vehicle. So there's a whole area by these pyramids. Now, I know this is kind of woo-woo, but think about it. If there was an integration with extraterrestrials of any kind, maybe it's even a sentient artificial intelligence robot that is also being soft disclosed to the public, as you can see through movies and real life, from the Tesla bot on and on and on, and they have some really impressive ones where you would see this thing. It doesn't want to get shot at by the little hairless apes. You know what I'm saying?
Oh man, I'm gonna skip the screens on this one. I'm just gonna pull off the virtual reality and just watch life move along. Now, can you imagine that? You described to me, man, this smells like worm urine, the smell from ammonia rising up from all this kind of grift that's happening. Think about if it was an AI, like a really incredible AI that's already sentient, already artificial general intelligence plus plus, because maybe to reach that already like 100 years ago, and it was just toying with us right now. So, get on all these systems, people are watching it. So what if you go on holiday and you're not having a good enough time? Could the AI boost it? And if your social credit score is good, they can boost like the craziness or the excitement or whatever happens on the holiday. And then if your social credit score, that thing could. Oh, it's almost like the Truman Show. It could start a fire over there. Okay, they're gonna scare you swinging over here. It's just like, what is this thing planned for humanity? Because right now with the integration in the news, it seems like anything could be put anywhere in any country or sections of countries or continents to stimulate the populace to move in a certain direction or do some action. And, I was thinking about when you said firearms there, I was thinking, what is the number one safety rule for firearms? I was thinking. Number one rule for safety for firearms: carry one. This world's getting crazy at the moment. Now, another thing that I've noticed is anytime they're talking about, like from Boston Dynamics and these, different types of robotic movements, whether it be spot or any kind of thing, they're terrified of anything getting lobbed into those machines because they're so fragile still, that even a single round could knock something out if it was at, sort of an armature somewhere. What if it was the central processing unit of that? I mean, you can armor those things out, but I mean, in reality, how many people drive around in bulletproof cars? I mean, in reality, like that movie John Wick, everybody there had a bulletproof. They were like the ultra elite of the top 1% of the 1%. Like their bodyguards and protection of that. That was a cool movie. It showed you into that level of what kind of protection and opulence there was. And I knew it was real when he slapped the gold coin on the on the table or on the bar and slid it over. I mean, that's the currency. And I mean, where does it go? But I wrote down a note here, Ransom. Those were all just my last thoughts listening to when you were talking about the digital ruble. For some reason, that kicked off all those thoughts, But the day after tomorrow, the way it's been cleverly put into is, how many years ago? That was Dennis Quaid movie. Had to have been like 10 years ago, that movie. Maybe even longer. But it's the same story. The Atlantic multiplication, or the overturning oscillation, the meridional overturning oscillation turns off. And because of that turned off water, no water circulates. So that non-circulating water creates these vast pools of cool air that in turn drive these super mega storms on the cold side. So think about that. They need to explain extreme cold coming in this year from the grand solar minimum, a steep drop off in solar activity that was not predicted by most, and also this runaway ozone depletion event in the southern hemisphere, plus all the water still in the atmosphere from the biggest eruption in 200 years almost. Yeah, more than 200 years. It was the biggest eruption, Toba. Or Tambora, excuse me. Lake Toba was a super volcano erupted 70,000 years ago in Indonesia. And Tambora, 1815, which caused the Irisala summer in 1816. But here it's created with Tonga, with all the water vapor, the year with weirdness in the environment. So if you're looking at previous charts of volcanic eruptions, the cooling or the effects on the atmosphere, it's usually about a 1 to 1.5 year delay before, like what I would consider cooling, which is happening in the southern hemisphere, but on the other side of the hemisphere, the northern hemisphere, we're in the opposite hemisphere. The effects are going to be a little bit differently pronounced than it is super, like record incredible snowfalls everywhere. And just in the Dolomites, it was snowing yesterday. And I just saw in Austria, it's just snowing today again. Like these things aren't making the news, but it wouldn't be a year without a summer. It'd be a year of complete strangeness in the climate. But think about that. Going to have to explain the extreme record cold that's inbound here, and crops are going to be lost. They're not going to be harvested on time this year. The cold's going to ensue so fast. It's going to catch so many people off guard. I mean, if you look at the Midwestern Grow Belt, these last 2 weeks solid, we heard about heat. But, prior to that, it's been below normal temperatures and drought this whole season. Doesn't matter if it was the wheat or the corn, both. And sorghum took a hit too. Only recently has it gotten warm. It's been really below normal temperatures in the areas we grow crops across the U.S. But see, that's the whole thing. They want you to forget that. See how quickly we forgot the entire exit out of the normal springtime of this year. And then suddenly it's all about heat. Oh, forget those really chilly temperatures 3 weeks ago. We want you to only focus on the heat this week. But when the cold comes back this winter, it's going to be early and it's going to be strong and it's going to be record cold in so many places. So how would they spin that? Be the spin machine for me. I need everybody's help here because I can't really think myself like this. It's a Thursday night after all. But you're going to have to explain away the record cold. How do you balance it being the cause of the record heat's the cause of the record cold? And this is the reason all these AMOC turning off Atlantic Ocean kind of things are happening. But that's not the reason. That's the reason they'll feed you. But there's all these other feedback loops that were going on. And even if I take the Tonga eruption, they quit the feed just 2 days after the eruption. All the feeds from the International Space Station cut. Although that place goes over that exact area from Tonga over to Australia every 1.5 hours around our planet. And they cut all the feeds, no photos. I think there were 5 photos of the eruption, but they showed that the ash was already scraping the space station after day 2. That's why they cut the feed. So even if you were to go to that point and say, all right, we had this biggest eruption in 200 and a little over years, could they have not got everybody into like a Manhattan Project and said, all right, y'all folks, we have a big problem here. This eruption, it's going to cause some serious disturbance in the ozone hole. And by the way, we're coming into a grand solar minimum, and we're really not going to be able to grow enough food for everybody. So look for resource nationalism, like India cutting off the rice supply. The Ukraine thing's happening. Grain supplies are gone. Y'all need to grow your own food. See, that should have been the messaging. Even if you didn't calculate the grand solar minimum, which they absolutely knew in the year 2000 was onsetting, and the exact time it would hit in 2015, they already had it established, that timeline. So John Casey was all about. But even if you scrub that time all the way to 2022 in the beginning, you should have been like day 2 or day 3 when that ash cloud was just starting to get way, way ferociously high into the atmosphere along with that water vapor. Like they should have been like, you all need to grow your own food, because from this point forward, that following year, following the same timelines, that 12 to 18 month period, once you hit that wham, you get the biggest effects. And that's coming into what we are right now through the rest of this in this next 2 to 3 months. Because you got to figure it was January of 2022, January 15th, I believe. So if you swing it out and then add 6 months on that, we're coming into the 7th. It'll be July 15th to be exactly 18 months. No, that'd be August 15th, excuse me. Which brings us right into that time when it's going to start extremes. I mean extremes from this effects from the volcanic eruption down there. Now, if you hadn't been watching the Southern Hemisphere, there's just record snow everywhere and just unbelievable floods everywhere. And that has also transited over the equator because it was such a high eruption. So all these things are going to add into more snow cover, more ferocious storms. This is a planetary event. Not only the solar activity declining, just literally supposedly dropping off a cliff. From what we have now, solar maximum, quote unquote, straight into a solar minimum in like a year. That's unheard of. And in addition to all these other electromagnetic effects, and now we got the ozone hole and then all this water vapor and crystals up in the atmosphere disturbing jet streams and cloud cells. I mean, and there's so much more water in the atmosphere too. 10% more moisture in our Earth's atmosphere after that eruption. See, to try to put it into perspective, they might talk about overturning oscillation in the Atlantic and slowing down to cause heavier snowstorms. And this is another thing. I am absolutely going to say it. The amount of record snow this year is going to boggle your minds. because all that water is starting to come out of the atmosphere after the eruption now. We're getting into the year. Usually it takes 3 years for it to clear out. So think about it. Boosh, it went up. And now, we saw tons of record floods as of late. And now we're really getting to the point where it's going to start sagging and saturating and getting down onto the ground level coming out of the atmosphere. So there was 10% more moisture added to Earth's atmosphere in a single day. 10% more is now in our atmosphere. So imagine the effects of that alone. So see, all these natural things are going to be masked by what the media wants you to believe it is. They're going to want you to believe it's a shutting down Atlantic Ocean. That's what they want you to believe. Not all these other things that were already cycles of predictable cycles, onsets, and hey, world, you should have gotten ready. But that's not the message, Ransom. I don't know, man. They're still keeping everybody on the system for some reason.
Well, you have to keep everybody linked up to the very last minute. I mean, everybody has to stay on the Titanic while it sinks. You can't, get ideas about making other plans and maybe floating away. No, I was, while you were talking about that, I was showing the NASA's global climate change vital signs of the planet feature about the Tonga eruption. And even in their own words, Tonga eruption blasted unprecedented amount of water into the stratosphere. And they talk about, they don't say the same things, but they do say it's going, like right here, in brief, right? This was since it blew up. The huge amount of water vapor hurled into the atmosphere, as detected by NASA's microwave LIM sounder, could end up temporarily warming Earth's surface. That sounds weird, though. Wouldn't it cool it off in the long run with more, water particles bouncing around the light before it got to the surface?
Yeah, and that's the reason that the noctilucent clouds are not visible, because the density in that layer of the atmosphere and the mesosphere is like hundreds of thousands of times more than normal with water crystal. That's why the light can't refract through it anymore. It's too dense. You can only get those noctilucent clouds when it's incredibly wispy. I'm talking about rocket launches, how many of those per year, and then meteorites coming in and leaving a smoke trail. That's it. That's the only kind of particulates in that huge layer of the atmosphere normally. And now you just shot hundreds of thousands of times of that, and water crystal, by the way, which reflects light itself. So that's, yes, I guess, huge amounts of difference.
Yeah, it says 58,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools it says right there, it says sheer amount of water vapor could be enough to temporarily affect Earth's global average temperature. But you notice they never mention that when they talk about any of these other things. Like, when's the last time that you heard a global warming expert or one of the weather shows that are saying, it's the hottest ever, even bring up that eruption? They don't even bring it up. It's like it never happened. And this is a very short page. I mean, there's like barely any info on the whole thing, but it was the feature that it's unprecedented amount of water. So later on, they can, bring this back and say, well, we said it on that one little paper.
Yeah, that one little paper that forgot to put all the images of the eruption in it. When they say 58,000 size Olympic swimming pools, okay. See, they're trying to shrink you back down into it's a human-sized thing, but it's not. And that's a ridiculously low number anyway. So what is it? They didn't have the calculation for the entire Earth's atmosphere, like how much water is in all of Earth's atmosphere, including the clouds and the hurricanes and, 10% more went into the atmosphere of all that, plus 10% in a single day from that eruption. That was not 58,000 swimming pools. That was more like 5 billion swimming pools ejected into the atmosphere. That is now coming down in terms of precipitation all the way across. And you got to think one thing, they never talk about cloud cell drag either, because if you look at Earth's climate system, it's the difference in the temperatures between those cloud cells that cause the convection, or the difference in hot and cold that pull winds. And that's what drives those cloud cells. And they're very distinct. It's like 0 degrees at the equator up to 30 degrees, or 30 degrees south or north, both. And they have the same cloud cells that copy paste all the way to the Arctic. So you get the 60 to 90 going up to the Arctic, 60 degree north to 90 degree north. But also in the South Pole, you get 60 degrees south to 90 degrees south, which is the Antarctic. See, and where you get those 30 degree marks, that's where that's where the cloud cells are mixing and looping. And that's where you get a lot of, weather events happening. But here's the thing, with that Hunga Tonga eruption, there was so much water pushed into the atmosphere, and a lot of it in the eruption was on 20 degrees south latitude, which drags over northern Australia, drags over Indonesia, and places like Guyana and in northern South America there, Venezuela, these types of places. It is incredible the amount of floods that are happening. And that's another thing to look at, is the amount of floods that you're seeing across the planet. It's not like a little bit of rain. It's usually like 10, 20, 50 times more rain than they've ever had, ever. Well, that would be expected. Imagine if you were coming into like a once in 100 or 200 or 400 year cycle, and that was the storm. Once in a 400 year flood was coming, but then you got an amplifier now with all the Hunga Tonga eruption. So not only do you have that once in a 400 year flood event, but then you have all this multiply and add in 10% more moisture to make that thing mix faster. And then bunch up the cloud cells because they're dragging slower anyway. So this is the whole thing. The convection, the movement of those cloud cells is slowed, ED past tense, down because there's so much moisture in it. Think about driving at night going through like the densest fog you've ever been in. Either walking, riding a bike, or driving a car, the densest fog you can ever remember being in, compared to an extremely dry, non-humid day in the middle of a desert. Like how much difference is in the speed of that wind moving or that medium moving? That dry air, that moves fast. That fog bank that you're walking through, drove through, rode a bike through, that's moving real slow. Now think about that's what needs to get dragged around now in the cloud cells to make them move, compared to super crispy, non-hydrated winds that are going to just zoom through there. That was the immediate. And now it's starting to really manifest. So that's the reason that they're trying to sell you on extreme cold events. But I'm going to say, look for the snow, Ransom. Extreme snows are coming in because more moisture from the Hunga Tonga eruption.
I think the aliens did it, man.
Fully.
More
They're
snow,
dead,
huh?
man.
More. No, I'm just actually, that'd be a good thought experiment for us to do is go ahead, like whoever's listening, just look at the amount of coverage and the extreme things that they're saying. They're still talking about grids going down because it's so hot, right? And then watch how fast they just stop talking about it here in about a month. I mean, they'll just end it. Unless there's some place, like one little area somewhere that's having extreme heat or high heat for that time of the year, they'll focus in on that and say, look, while other places are, like you remember at the beginning, they weren't saying, they kept saying winter storm at the beginning of this spring, right? So spring was happening, and there was still snow coming down in a bunch of different places, and the news articles would say winter storm instead of spring storm, because they don't want you to think about that. It's still snowing in spring in a lot of places. Yeah, you got a warm day, and then the idea that this is extreme for here is laughable to me, and they keep on doing that. Like I've been watching different news cuts, and they like I said, everything is based on feelings now, not fact. So they've convinced people that, so if you're outside and it's 35% humidity and it's 98 degrees, like say you lived in Houston today, they would say it feels like 107 degrees. And they would just go with that on the news. Look, the heat index and all of these other things but the truth is it actually feels like 98 degrees because it is 98 degrees. So they just keep on, it's a manipulation of thought. So as long as they can try to convince people that an emergency is happening, they're going to be afraid of it, even when it's just normal weather patterns that have been on the earth forever. I mean, we've been here. I bet human beings have seen some of the most amazing things. Like, imagine living right at the end of the Hunger Dryas and what you might have seen as a human being at that time.
Yeah, we need to go chill out in a glacial stream right now. Watching the Antarctic melt. Oh, no, wait, it's in winter. Sorry, Greenland is melting. I want to be in a glacial stream in Greenland. Make sure not to slip on the rocks with all the grinding on the earth there included in the glacial melt. But let's go deep underwater with a GoPro and see what it looks like. We'll be right back after the break. 2050 agenda. CO2 compressed pipelines in play.
Central banks have been getting prepared by stockpiling gold. At ITM Trading, we have spent over 27 years building a
Oh, I can't believe I was on mute for that. Thank you, Ransom, for telling me. Yeah, Revolution Radio, thank you so much for allowing us to broadcast our message here, because just as we were on break, just before we went to the break, it just ended. Like COVID just ended on a dime. There was no movement. It was like it was the world's biggest thing for 3 years, and then whoosh, it just stopped on a dime in a single day, and the world decided to forget it and move on to what? Well, we are at the what right now. This heat will end just as quickly. It's the world #1 news story. It's going to be giant. It's going to be big for the next 2 months. Then it'll just boom. It'll end on one day, and the entire media across the planet will move to a different story in unison. So you will totally forget the heat. They're going to focus on the cold or the snowfall. And that's what I was saying. You know, Revolution Radio, thank you for letting us broadcast here. If you all consider free speech something to continue on air, revolution.radio, head up to that navigation bar up at the top. You'll find a way to donate. And as I was saying, Ransom and I have been, you know, talking back and forth here about putting show notes together, because it's an audio format. And sometimes you could have, if you had a list of notes of what we talked about, you could do your own research because, you know, oh, yeah, I wanted to do more research into that. You could use it as talking points to kind of go through and talk to friends and family or start conversations, these sort of things. So Ransom and I have always been thinking about putting just a written one-pager together. If you want to get our show notes, we're going to start this week. So oilseedcrops.org, MIAC radio show. And if you put your email in there, we are going to absolutely get you a copy of the show notes. And again, it's our first week, so still trying to get the design fully on it, but we want to keep it under one page. Everybody's busy. It's just going to be bullet points about what we talked about tonight, of what we consider, me and Ransom, the most important things in this 2 hours. And we both take notes, and we'll just try to consolidate it down into, I don't know, between 8 and 13 different points that we thought were the most important, poignant things to talk about in this radio program. So again, that's oilseedcrops.org, MIAC radio show right along here with Revolution.radio, Studio B every Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight. Rolling through some thoughts here. David DuByne with Ransom Godwin. Free speech is taking a battering. Ouch. So is the truth about everywhere you see. It's almost like we need to escape out into a yurt, into the forest, and just drop all communication devices, because it seems it's all encompassing and it's bending reality of a lot of people. It's like a water spout in the sunset, I guess.
Dude, I was kind of laughing pretty hard here. Somebody asked if there was a Mitch moment going on on the dead silence. Oh, man.
That was a David moment, not hitting the unmute off the microphone there.
No, I can't wait for the next round of things, man. These guys, if you think about it, there's probably a think tank sitting around tonight while we're, having this live broadcast. And they have notes from spying on people and looking at trends and looking at conversations on social media, and an algorithm is giving them all of the stuff to look at that they're looking for. And they're sitting in there thinking, what's most believable to get away with another agenda point of ours next? I don't have much faith in humanity as far as it seems like the Pavlov dog training has taken effect. Plus, I'm not even mad at people because it's a technological attack that's happening to them from all angles. And we've talked a lot about movies. I watched a movie last night that was really kind of funny that was on Netflix called They Cloned Tyrone. And the premise of the movie was basically that a secret organization that may or may not work for the government, but is definitely tied to corporations, was putting, a little medication in the food and, and the products that you buy for hygiene, et cetera, like that. But underground, they had clones of people, and they would just send them up, and they were people that were made specifically to keep humans down on the poverty level. So in other words, they knew that the communities would do fine unless they put somebody in there, like they had a drug dealer, a pimp, a prostitute, and some other people that were clones. And every time they got killed, they would just put another version of them out on the streets. And their job was to make sure that there's just enough fear and depression to keep everybody down. Meanwhile, they would, lighten up their endorphins if they bought some chicken or, rented a movie or listened to the right music. They even put in there that they could switch moods of an entire group of people from fighting over to liking each other just based on the song and the, subliminals that they were putting in there. It really, they give you these movies and they put it out there. So if you ever come across any real programs that they're doing and you try to, sound the alarm to someone else and say, hey, look, there's this, they go, oh yeah, I saw that movie. You're crazy, or you're a conspiracy theorist because I saw that movie. And that's the reason that they make sure that the media, as far as the news output from the quote unquote authoritative sources, which we now know is probably at least half or more than half AI generated. So not only are the images that you're getting, the whole thing is tied into this complete technocratic system. Once they have a foothold on controlling your digital identification, in other words, they have a centralized identification that you have to use in order to shop, travel, or, prove who you are. And this goes into like I said, they're going to switch over the firearms, automobiles, everything's going to be linked to your digital identification. And connected to that is the Chinese style social credit score. So you must behave. Now, once they get this completely entrenched in society where people think that they need it and that they want it, and think about this. You remember a long time ago when everybody had the landline in their house, and everybody did just fine. And that's actually kind of if you think about it, the golden era of our civilization, when we didn't have too much intrusion by electronics and artificial intelligence. Now, most people were still glued to the boob tube, as they called it at the time. However, now think about how they switched everybody to the idea that you need a cell phone. Well, look at this new cell phone. It's not a big box with a cord. You don't have to carry it around like a suitcase. It's small. It's like, you can carry it with you. And then next year they had, well, look at this. It's a flip phone, just like from Star Trek. And then, and then eventually they converted everyone over to the screen, back to the movie screen, like in A Space Odyssey 2001. The giant monolith, the black rectangle, represented the screen in that movie, according to the guy, what's his name, Stanley Kubrick or whatever it was. But he even talked about that. That was the silver screen at the time. Now they miniaturized this and they put it into a robot that has an emblem on it, that has an apple that you take a bite out of, and the proverbial iconography that goes along with that. And then they got everybody used to this idea that they needed to keep buying a new version of that phone to stay updated. And if you watch people now, you could do a social experiment, because I've seen it because of lack of coverage. If you put human beings in an area where there is no connection, they start to panic, fidget, and act crazy. So there is an addictive, program going on that people feel like they need to stay connected at all times to the internet and always have a screen to look at. I watch people now in emergencies, like you watch videos of an emergency going down. Someone will literally let someone beat them to death because they won't put their phone down, and they can't figure out how to do things that takes two hands to do. So we're evolving on one end as a species that is devolving, more like is the correct word. So we have a devolving species due to outside stimuli, like poison in the food, drink, water, just like that movie, a fictional tale. But when you think about it in real life, the exact same thing is happening. That's why there's words like excitotoxins. And if you don't know what that is, that's chemicals that they put into the food that have a similar response on the brain, like methamphetamines or heroin, which excites your brain and puts out endorphins. Now, another name for that is monosodium glutamate, but they've perfected other things like flavor compounds. You don't want to know where some of those come from. If you're religious, you might not want to know that you're eating said compounds that come from certain procedures, not to be too vivid with that. But we're going into a new phase now. So now there's the devolving population that is being culled. This is the culling time. And there's various, deadly diseases out there that seem to be inescapable, i.e. cancer. And you notice that there's so many programs to fight for the cure for cancer. Like there's races to, you could race for the cure, you could donate for the cure. They have all of these telethons for the cure. But you notice what they don't have is they don't have a race for the cause. They don't have a charity that donates money for the cause of cancer. Right? So they don't want to know what that is, because you can't treat that, and that you can't use it as a product. So our entire civilization is being devolved into a sickly, lethargic, low IQ populace. And at the same time, the elites are inventing new ways to create human beings without the need for parents. And whenever you realize that, you can directly connect that to the idea that the nuclear family idea is completely being destroyed in this time period, not just a little bit, but all the way. Here's an article from Breitbart, Death of the Family. Half of children right now are not living with both parents by 14, meaning that men and women can't figure out how to get along long enough to raise children and educate them and teach them things to the next generation. So that presents a major problem for the idea of a breakaway civilization, and kind of what I was talking about, little secret schools of knowledge where groups of like-minded people like ourselves start to trade in ideas as a form of currency, basically. So we pay each other in ideas so that the other people learn new things and it doesn't get lost to time or lost to the digital intrusion of a new system, which they're implanting. So there is a little bit of hope, though. Here's a trend, just speaking of it, that is quite surprising, actually. Millennials are investing more in gold than boomers or Generation X. So, there's a lot of things annoying about millennials, but as far as buying gold, it seems like more of them are figuring out that there's going to be a problem with the old styles of transactions, the old styles of monetary system, because they have to convert over to this centralized world government, which includes biometrics attached to your digital portfolio or wallet or whatever you want to call it. And it's going to be a centralized kind of token that the entire world can use. Now, they've already tried this in the euro and it's had its problems, but if they could get everybody on board and centralize an idea, imagine around the world, everything kind of collapses because it has to switch over to a new system. In other words, the worth of products will not be the same because there are no competing currencies at this point. And the only way to survive that, I hate to say it, is if you have any money right now, you might want to switch over to a time-tested form of purchasing, which is gold. I know a lot of people don't like the idea of having it or holding it. However, this is something that your great-grandchildren, if you kept it in your family, can still use probably in 2080 or 2075. In the future, it's still going to be money. It's always been money. And when you look around at they're slowly but surely getting rid of all of the other forms and centralizing first into just two. I think it's going to be for another probably 2 or 3 years, the competing dollar versus the BRICS. But every time I open a browser, there's another article talking about more countries willing to join the BRICS to skip the petrodollar. And then, like back to what I said, the comedy show of what's going on. Meanwhile, while there's all of these problems in the background, when you look at things like Mitch McConnell dozing off into space and Nancy Pelosi barely being able to talk, you got on and on and on. There's a lot of these characters that are lifetime politicians and decision makers. Think about Henry Kissinger. But the entire lot of them are on the edge of life itself, which puts in serious doubt who's running things. If a person can't put their pants on the right way, like Joe Biden, because he's been spotted on numerous occasions with his pants on backwards. I don't know what that's about. But obviously they all have severe neurological and mental problems and are being boosted up by probably pharma and handlers. And now it's becoming apparent to the population who is running everything if the leaders of the world seem to not even be in touch with basic things and reality. So who's running it? Well, they're slowly admitting every single industry, from the movies you watch to the news you read, to the money that you're making on the stock market, to everything. It's all intertwined into this artificial intelligence. Now, everybody's competing for that as well, which brings me to the point that itself, the artificial intelligence race or exponential increase of companies using it, is going to have to be governed by some kind of centralized artificial intelligence. Now, the question is who is going to be able, or who is allowed to run that, and how soon is that around the corner? Because think about it, they're already having hearings about the controlling of AI. And as long as AI keeps exponentially increasing, you're going to either by false flag or by real-time terrorists are going to be using their programs, artificial intelligence learning machines in combination to disrupt things and change things forevermore. So when do you think the singularity of not only the monetary system, but the AI control of all industry is going to happen? I think it's going to happen a lot sooner than people think. It's just around the corner within a couple of years, in my opinion. The problem is it's going to not be apparent to the sheeple that are intrinsically locked into this artificial fictional system that's being broadcasted from all angles.
Yeah, I'd have to take that in a couple different directions. But when you were talking about, the ability to grow food, I have actually 2 bags of seed in front of me because you said popcorn earlier, and I wrote this note down, popcorn, and then, thinking about sitting there for the sideshow of whatever distraction will be next. Actually, Wild Woman Seeds, thank you if you're listening tonight, sent me these bags of heirloom seed from different areas, and these are both buckwheat varieties. So I'm going to go off a little bit here. Since Ransom said grow popcorn, I absolutely agree because the Amish near our place grow popcorn. And they also, what you call Indian corn that you see around like Thanksgiving, which is soon coming, that's all heirloom seed. Those aren't commercial varieties, but it's still a corn. So when you grind it, you have blue corn chips, you can get purple corn chips. That's the same stuff. Although it might not be 100% purple or blue, it'll be mixed in. It'll be an off color a little bit because there'll be some yellow kernels, some gray kernels, right along with like the purple kernels. So it'll change. It won't be jet purple. But growing popcorn, absolutely. Because again, that's a tradable. Think about people going to movie theaters, still got popcorn. Think about 1930s stories, kids are eating popcorn. It's been around with all generations all this time. It's just as valuable as having like seed or food or water. But then once you come past that into the entertainables, then, that has a huge value in entertainables and after just life necessities for trading. So I have these different kinds of buckwheat here that are right in front of me because we're trying to plant out the last, right now, if you plant for the fall and winter crops, it's just about that time to get your gardens ready to turn it over and go to the fall and winter crops. Wait till mid-August, but then, plant it in, let that heat dissipate. Rose red Soba buckwheat. And then I have Tucane ruby buckwheat. The seeds look very similar, but this Tucane ruby buckwheat looks much, much darker on the seed hull. And the rose red. So I would imagine that it's just the color of the hull when it looks at in a certain thing of the sunlight. And by the way, buckwheat's super easy to grow, and it provides pollination for our bees. It gives them a source for pollination, which, by the way, the dearth is coming for anybody out there raising bees or know anything about bees. They're going to need sugar cubes, because they're not so much wildflower out there for them to forage. So they're coming into this time right now, like myself. I need to make some squares of sugar, dissolved sugar, for them to survive. Even when they think it might be the summer. So being outside more also. Like the moon's coming about half tonight. It's a really nice night out here in East Tennessee. Stars have been out for the last 3-4 nights here. It's been awesome to watch the moon grow in size and look at the stars. And, just really, it was so cloudy here for a while and rainy these last couple of weeks. To see the sun again is like, wow, nice. It's been a few days of just straight sunshine and beautiful skies, 4 days or so already. But looking up into the skies, not only the natural phenomenon, because I saw a really nice shooting star the other night. We're going to start to see a lot more sky and celestial phenomenon. And I don't know how many people still look at the stars in the sky and look at the sun. Because you have to realize for the last, 12,000 years or even longer, further back to the ending of the Ice Age, 20,000, 22,000, 23,000 years ago in France, cave paintings, Lascaux. Think about that. Reports of UFO sightings. Can I relabel the chart here? Because I wanted to jump. The reason I'm talking about sky phenomenon is we're going to see more shooting stars, plasma phenomenon, flashing of lights, different kind of electrical storms. They're just different. They're just different right now. But at the same time, these electrogravitics craft zooming all over the place in anticipation of something alien. There should be a lot more sightings of stuff. It's electrogravitics. So, Ransom, I sent you that chart there that said reported UFO sightings. I wanted to actually change the title on the slide because that doesn't reflect what I see. I think it's antigravitics test craft sightings. anti-gravity test craft sightings. And I would just relabel that map right there, because if you look at it, it's predominantly the eastern United States and the western out where the military bases are, the UK, parts of Germany. Definitely looks like Puerto Rico there down in the island chain in the Caribbean, all over Israel, a little bit Middle East, especially Spain. And then we see it in Australia, a little bit down in South Africa, down in Cape Town area. And going across down to South America, what is that? Oh, southern Brazil and Rio, it looks like. Oh, and there's a hot spot in Costa Rica also. Hawaii Islands blazing. But think about this. If it is electrogravitics or anti-gravity craft, that fits right in with what seems to be coming next. The release of the stories. You're going to see a lot more stuff in the skies. A lot of it's going to be natural. A lot of it will be. The phenomenon you'll see, like you're going to witness some of the craziest electrical storms coming. You get these late season boomers coming, like these giant thunderheads that rise up out from the humidity building through the day. Like as we come into this winter time here, this is going to be really fast right into the fall and bam, right up against cold walls everywhere. These electrical fronts are going to get incredibly intense. Where what was it, last week before the rain stopped? I had not really experienced this phenomenon before, and this is in East Tennessee, so maybe you've had the same experience. I hadn't really before this. But the front was coming in, and you would see, 6, 8, 9, 10 flashes just in that right then, in like that same 2 seconds. And you could your eye picks it up, or it's slightly fast. You could see there was different flashes in it for sure. But the thing was, all the sonic booms from the lightning all arrived at the same time, like boom. And it just rattled the house. I mean, rattled the house. Literally, like rattled where the timbers. It almost like the dust was coming out from between the timbers. It was rattled so heavily and densely. The vibration of that roar just like went through substance. I really hadn't had that happen before. And, like I said, there's a lot more phenomenon. People are going to be looking at the skies, possible plasma for sure. A lot more meteors and debris coming in. And then, you know what, Ransom, I'm going to let you take it away because I know you want to go there. These anti-gravitics test craft sightings. That's the only way they can bring out the free power into the world is through alien technologies, because you're going to be super ultra angry when you realize not just your lifetime, but the last 120 years, we didn't have to go through the explosion combustion phase of where we are. We could have just started with this back then. But there would have been no money in laying out copper wiring, all the pipelines, all the ports, all the shipping that would be needed, all the oil refineries, and then the transit routes to get that black substance to another place. And we would have needed none of that. Not even a single copper wire over our heads would have been needed, because we could have gone to electrogravitics, otherwise known as free power devices running off the Earth's magnetic field using magnets against each other, north and south, push away, just put them in a circle, and then whoosh, they continue to spin indefinitely for free. No combustion required, Earth's magnetic field required. But you can't go to that without some extreme, gigantic jump, full depopulation, and then whoosh, aliens come, and there's this transition point in between. And we're just suddenly there. And there's free power everywhere, and everybody's running up to the silver orb to put their digital ocular print into. Maybe we're going to the oculist, and that truly was what the silver orb is. It's the oculist grabbing your details, man. It's getting your biometrics. Damn, that's rough. But still, where do we go from here, Ransom, is the question. I see it, but I don't see it. I'm in the fog somewhere. Guide me through.
I think it might be a little bit different than you were describing there. Now, I'm looking at this map that you sent me of the reported UFO sightings. And isn't it amazing that the United States is completely just about covered? These are the population that's being targeted. Now, I changed it for the map you sent me last week. You know, the one where it shows the money coming in and or leaving, and also coming in.
Yes, I do. That was a good one from the Deagle report in arrows.
This is the same map. It's the same map. Look at the all the places where people don't see UFOs are the places where the money's going into and the people are leaving. Now, I mean, just
dude,
ironically.
I'm glad you got that one. I didn't even think
Well,
about it.
I was just looking at it because last week when you showed me that, I just realized that was the same map I see for everything. It's the same map for, which countries are the most vaccinated. If I can still say that, because that's not controversial. That is the ones with the red arrows going down. These are the countries that are being collapsed. And when you look at that other map, it's also the same countries just about. Like if you look at the red places, those are the ones with the most UFO sightings.
Yeah, I would like to see that night. If I could interject for a second, I'd like to see the 1906 to 1938, just that, detail of those years, 1906 to 1938. I would love to see that chart alone. Like, what's this world look like just in those years of anti-gravitics or test craft? Because Tesla, they would have been experimenting with that. 1898, 1890, 1910, 1905, whatever. They were already on to that, super big and heavy. So there already would have been sightings because they were working with anti-gravitics craft and anti-gravity technologies back in the late 1800s. So some of that's true. I'd love to see that 1906 because I bet they'll all be right around where their test facilities were, like over in Zagreb or in Croatia or something. Anyway, I digress. But Croatia does have a whole bunch of sightings. That's interesting.
Yeah, that is funny. But if you also think about this too, if you had a different idea on what's going on, alien invasion, it seems like maybe if you listen to Admiral Byrd and what he said happened at Operation High Jump before he changed his mind, is that a cover story? Were they really just covering up that they were going down there with all these troops and planes and, naval vessels and stuff to go down to the Antarctic just to do a science expedition? What if this is how it rolls out? Continued warring happens, right? Between Western nations or NATO and Russia, and then a small, or maybe even China involved in here, in a World War III scenario where a small, limited number of thermonuclear weapons are deployed out on the earth, scaring the entire population of the world again, as if they did in World War II, because I'm sure at the time, if you lived then and you realized that they popped 2 nuclear devices off in Japan, that might have, put a little shudder down your spine and made you have a little fear for your ever-living soul there, living on the planet where they've done this. But they actually did that about 2,000 times. So or a little more than that, 2,100 or 200 times. And that's only the ones that are declassified in public knowledge. That are acknowledged that we have done it. And multiple countries, France, England, the United States, Australia, Korea, South Korea, China, Iran, not Iran, that was a mistake, Afghanistan and Pakistan is what I meant. So India, not Afghanistan. I don't know why I said that. India, all of these nuclear nations popping it off. So there's about 2,200 or so that have already gone off. So they've already simulated a nuclear war on Earth, and they know that the Earth will keep on rolling. Now, if you didn't want people to go in areas, or you wanted to change the maps permanently and set up a climate czar type situation where you have people living in 15-minute cities, only in certain designated areas, separated by class and a caste system based on your social credit score and the amount of digital currency that you've retained in the transition, you might need electrogravitic devices to ward off said alien invasion. And it wouldn't be hard to convince a populace that don't worry about it. They crashed here. We reverse engineered it. We held it back from the populace because we didn't want religious institutions to dissolve, like they mentioned in the Brookings report. And, this would be the way that they would just unfold disclosure. And then human beings wouldn't be allowed to go to certain areas on the planet, not unlike how they can't go to Antarctica. And that has been that way since after Operation High Jump, where people were claiming that there were anti-gravitic devices flying around under the control of the Third Reich at the time that were reverse engineered vehicles. Now, if that has any legitimacy, or even the Bell, the famous Bell, right? If any of that has any resemblance of truth to it, that means that there is somewhere, probably most likely in the United States, China, United States, Great Britain, a program that has been creating and working on and testing anti-gravitic devices for their own national security. And now, if that's true, they can just pop out after this said small nuclear war as the heroes to where they put in. And actually, I brought this up before. There's a guy, Joel Scalzon, that wrote a book called Strategic Relocation, and where he theorizes that they've indeed already have this plan between us and China that they would allow China to either first strike or set off an EMP to disrupt the entire grid of the Western world over here. And meanwhile, we would come out of the end of that after some, destabilization with the next level of technology, claiming that we need an endless supply of global taxes to protect us not only from another nuclear holocaust, but alien invasion. We could, fend off a group, a threat that you could never see with your own eyes or verify if it's real. And an endless amount of black budget could be sent off while we retain the title of prison planet in a slave situation that's now a digital technocratic slavery where people are forced to be in separate caste systems. And you can already see that developing in today's, minus the aliens. So they don't even have to use aliens. They can pop the pandemic back out of the hat. There's any number of things that they can convince the public that they need to turn over their sovereignty, inalienable rights. The latest scare. I mean, it's almost like we should start a gambling, kind of like a Deadpool. If you've ever seen that movie, The Cabin, where they're all gambling on how everybody's going to die once, and that was a pretty weird movie because it was about a sacrifice. And if they didn't give the sacrifice, then Pandora's box would open up and, all of the old world gods and demons and stuff would float around, messing with people. But they kind of do that now, and they tell us, well, look, we need all this money to protect you from hackers, from nuclear war, from you personally destroying the environment. You need to pay us so we can protect you. Now, wouldn't that be even a more believable and easier to keep the masses from questioning if you had an invisible alien threat? At some point in the future, an invisible alien threat that you never have to prove. You could just tell people that, this is that, and you could do anything from project things in the sky to actually blowing up stuff in the upper atmosphere to make people afraid, thinking things are going on up there that they can't see. And think about this also. When you think about the Brookings report and how it said that civilization would unravel because the religious and other fundamental structures of human society would just unravel, they're doing that right now. So the time of Christianity is over, and Christianity has always been based on this 2,000-year implement of Pisces, and now that time is over. So, wouldn't it make sense that it wouldn't really unravel society anymore now that they've had nearly 60 years of predictive programming about alien invasions or alien involvement in society, or even with the fringe elements that believe that aliens not only are among us, visit us, but they're the people that started the institutions of human civilization from the beginning.
I'm going to say only if you believe it. It's like we're locking ourselves in these prison of thoughts. Because I'm starting to question reality and say, wow, What if every thought I've thought of everything that I am thinking now, including everything we're talking about in this program, is creating the reality around me? But what if I just shifted that and didn't believe it anymore, and just tomorrow I wake up and I create a different reality in my mind? Will this same reality exist at that time or not? Or will I literally be transported? Like, again, you're creating your own dimension. You're creating your own from your thoughts. So that drastic of a shift of thought, could you actually skip dimension in time and arrive at that thought where this one literally does not exist anymore? Like the footprint and the fingerprint of this world that we see and know now would completely dissolve in front of you and a new one would manifest. See, that's if you believe all these things are happening or not, or you can choose not to. Is the mind strong enough to overcome that, to allow you to break through the chrysalis, as I've heard it called, the crystal, the other side, the plane, the energy field? There's a lot of names for it. But I did want to ask you to pull up another chart for me. I sent you another one here, Ransom. It says agriculture's footprint. And the green areas are labeled for food, and the purple areas are labeled for feed, like animal feed, and fuel, like corn for ethanol and that sort of stuff. So feed and fuels, animals, and ethanol for cars, motor fuels, and then the green is for food. So we're coming into this grand solar minimum right now, and the effects are going to be felt immediately as we descend into this winter. I mean, this is it. This is the year of everything I've done all my research for, talking about as we go into this year, and then the apex magnetically occurs in October of 2024. Remember, we're going to go through this extreme winter of incredible snowfalls. At the same time, early freezes are going to come in. So when I look at this map, I say North America, up where you see that purple that's up in Canada, a predominantly large amount of that won't get harvested or will be restricted in the amount of yield because the cold will onset earlier and it won't come to full maturation. I know they have shorter, like 60-day crops up there and thing, but still, it's going to be a rapid onset. So some of that, north up into Canada, areas up in Asia, north and east of Kazakhstan, it looks like. I mean, you got to look where these fuel areas are, too. All of the United States, the main grow belts for corn and for wheat, all the way down through Texas, down into Louisiana. It's like a crab pincer. Like these areas, if you look at that, feed and fuel, they need to take those areas offline. And when I say they're going to override it and it's going to be overlaid with, there's going to have a lot of natural changes coming in these areas. I mean, a lot. But at the same time, the way it's structured right now is to ride on top of that natural cycle to create even more loss. So Ransom, look at this map in a different way. The feed and fuel, that purple, that needs to disappear from the map. Now, we know there's going to be a huge amount of different types of storm formations coming in, off of the Maritimes of Canada and also descending incredible deep lows and just the most insane temperatures coming off the Arctic to sweep down through the United States and Canada, in addition to the rainfall and the extra moisture in the atmosphere from Hunga Tonga and what they can do with HARP over this thing. That purple needs to disappear. So now you got the excuse of the Atlantic oscillation. Oh, it's interfering with the Atlantic weather. Well, it's really about taking away the feed, like the animal feed. Because this whole push toward don't eat any animals, go toward insects and seaweed. If you don't have any animal feed, I mean, the animals are going to follow the feed trajectory, right? So if you're going to subtract 20% animal feed off the planet, well, then the amount of animals needs to decrease 20% because the animals must match the food. It's not the other way around. And see, that's what I'm starting to realize here with the human population too. Like these same people in power understood that we're not going to be able to grow enough food naturally from this grand solar minimum cycle. Like there just wouldn't be enough food. So there was something done in advance to reduce the population to make up for this year's losses in crops across the planet. To make it appear as if there's still the same amount of food, but the population is greatly reduced. But then what happens with next year and then the next year? See, the food possibility for us to continue to grow foods in a grand solar minimum continues to decrease with every single year. I mean, go back and look at the Maunder minimum say 1630, 1650, somewhere around there. It's heavy. They got frost fairs on the Thames River. England freezes over every year to the point where they have frost fairs on the river in the middle of London, which hasn't frozen like that in hundreds of years. That's where we're going back to. So the amount of food that can be grown is going to be greatly reduced. So just like you would do with the animal feed, if you can only produce 80% of the animal feed for the animals' planets, and the 20% of the animals need to be culled. Maybe that's why there's a sale at the store. There's extra meats. Maybe that's what they're doing. Culling these is they're doing the same thing, reducing the food. And the fuel mandates. Everything's running on fuel. You got to have fuelless cars. Got to do this. Can't have this. Can't have that. Well, you would also have to take away 20% of the world's fuel supply, because if you're growing the corn for the ethanol to add in, okay, 15%, my bad, because there's actual max 15% in the fuels. So if you don't have that extra 15% of available fuels, then what? You won't have the animal feed and you won't have the ethanol. So what are we seeing targeted today? The meats feed animals and also the fuels and the combustion engines. It goes hand in hand. But here's what that's not the scary part. That's kind of I noticed that in the purple in the chart right away. The green is what shocked me looking at this. That's the food areas. And if you look over here in India, they just stopped export of all rice coming out of there. And I look at this map and I go, that is the biggest area of green on the entire map of the densest, of the largest amount of space and area on land surface area. Food, India, they just stopped exports. And then we go over to the purple areas and they're getting decimated. The food and fuel areas are just absolutely atrocious right now. And I don't know, Ransom, what'd you see in that chart? You got any thoughts to try to add on to it? It looks like Kenya or Tanzania would be another. Oh, and Sudan too. Why is the Sudan there? Okay, well. Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry, that's not Sudan. But anyway, Kenya and what's going on in Kenya these days? Eritrea. Yeah, it is Sudan, South Sudan, and then, yeah. I wonder if there's. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that thought there, but that's what popped up when I saw that map. Does it make sense, or is it kind of off base there? What do you think about that?
No, it makes sense to me. I mean, anytime you're talking about reducing feed or fuel to an area, what you're actually talking about is reducing the population of the people there that eat that food that's produced by that feed and that fuel. And if you look at those purple areas, this is what's so funny is you can do this with every map. It's the Western world that's being destroyed, and the third world is what's being built up by corporations and stuff. But they don't want people to know that. Because that might cause a lot of problems when people are, voting for people and whatnot. But I can go back to that same thing, the map that you sent me right there. The red arrows on this map are the same arrows that are the same areas of the purple right there. And you see the green, except minus China, right? Because China is not going to reduce anything that they're doing. They can't because of how their society's set up. And they're actually in a little bit of trouble right now because they misestimated their population by a lot. And they're just like us. They're an increasingly elderly population. So if you look at this map right here, when you look at those purple areas, I think that you're looking at population reduction. It's not just feed and fuel reduction. And the areas that are growing food, that's all, places that we're talking about. You can look at the Yucatan. There's a bunch of green stuff there. You got Florida. It's not really, it seemed like that if the United States was the breadbasket that it used to be, that this map wouldn't look like that. But this is where they're wanting to shut down. And ironically, this kind of mirrors the UFO map as well. And I know you we're saying, I don't remember what it was, but something about, the idea that possibly somebody could collect the obese populations kind of being more abducted or something. And that was a strange idea. However, think about this. if all of these changes are happening genetically, like I could put a map there, like I said, of the areas of gene manipulation that's more prevalent in the society, from the food that they eat, the epigenetics and the whole thing would be in these Western countries. Because we're the ones that are taking new compounds, medications. We're the ones that eat food that's been altered in many different ways. And we've been doing it for decades. Because, even before there was the food modification era, the populace was subjected to new compounds from the petroleum industry in the packaging and the canning and the production of products. And some of those turned out to be not so bueno for people, where they develop problems from it. So they seem to go through phases where they just poison the population. Now, I wanted to ask you a question. If we went through like a decade of, let's say, global famine, I'll just say famine, not complete starvation, but famine, enough where people are really irritable and the entire world seems to be more in a depressed state because of the low production of food. But then all of a sudden we discover that there's this government that knows about aliens, and all you have to do to convert over to their system is, just take a little chip in the back of the head, and that chip there will translate their language for you. It'll give you your programming. It'll have all your necessary, identifications, money, etc. And you could become a world citizen of Earth. And think about this. What if they went the opposite direction from what I was talking about before, as far as an endless, black budget project to fight off an invisible enemy? We're at the era they could show us that enemy. They could grow it in a lab, put it in a flight suit, and fly it right down and crash it in your neighborhood. But they could go the other way. What if they say that the aliens are the answer to all our problems, which would fit right in with more of a conquering thing, but a friendly type? They could also do that, and it could be real or fake. That's what's so scary about that, is they could create a creature that's, just an ambassador of their people, and they're showing us how they survive by editing their food and regulating their population, limiting the CO2 production, and maybe we might just get our planet to the right level, like down around 200 parts per million. I forgot, I send you a picture that was talking about the CO2 levels, and how we're where was it? Yeah, here it is. Let me save this. According to this graph, so right now we're less CO2 than we were in 1930. Let's see here, 1920 was more CO2 than now. Now, if you think about that, what kind of industry was going on then? And it shows this rise of CO2 allegedly, but it also shows a steep decline to where we have less CO2 than we did in the half century right here in the United States, or per capita CO2 emissions, not CO2 in the air, but we're putting out less than we ever have, but yet they're still convincing you that we need to cut it back. Now, why would you cut it back? I mean, think about that just in a weird, let's go woo-woo. I've been thinking about that. If we had giant amounts of animal life and forests at different times in our geologic history, and there was massive amounts of CO2 at those times, and obviously life itself did very well everywhere on the earth at those times, why would we be trying to reduce it down to a number that's close to an extinction level number? From what I understand, we're at like 419, 420, no pun intended, parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere now, and they want to reduce it further, which means that it would go down closer to like 200, which from what I understand is an extinction level amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
Terraforming is the answer. Think about the nuclear exchange. You talk about nuclear tests underground, above ground, those sort of tests, underwater tests that they've done, 2,000 different plus explosions. They've been slowly irradiating the planet at the same time. Are they waiting for the low magnetic field so they can step in with these alien bodies? I don't know. A lot of low magnetic field state types of things are going to be happening on our planet over the next 3 years here. So, from now until, middle or toward the end of 2025, there's going to be some extreme fluctuations in the Earth's magnetic field. So, I mean, are they able to exist in that if you're thinking they're a physical body? But I'm looking at terraforming and thinking, perhaps these are some of the notes we want to put together. And by the way, it's our first week, so I'm going to say it again here. Oilseedcrops.org. If you want to get our show notes tonight for the subjects we spoke about, Ransom and myself, MIAC radio show. So if you head over to oilseedcrops.org, just stay in the navigation bar at the top, and you'll see one that says MIAC radio show. Click that and enter your email, and we'll get you a show notes for everything we talked about. Again, it's good for conversation starters or subjects you were thinking about, exploring more, talking with others. And it's already out in a printed format, so, you could have your own show about it with others, or, it's good to get conversations started, especially where we sit right now. And to add on to what you were talking about here, I have a newspaper clipping, actually. Where's this one from? Knoxville News Sentinel. This is from July 9th on a Sunday edition. Nations agree to slash shipping emissions. You don't. Because the net zero 2050 goals state that any carbon dioxide emitted in any type of system, manufacturing, motor, that includes ships, cars, airplanes, will have to be captured and liquefied and sent down a pipeline to an underground storage facility called Carbon Capture Underground Storage. We'll give you the show notes, oilseedcrops.org/MIAC radio show. Ransom Godwin, David DuByne signing off. We'll see you next week. If we didn't go super. Nope.